In a decisive move that highlights Slovakia's growing assertiveness on the international stage, Prime Minister Robert Fico has resisted the European Union's proposal to impose tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, EVs.
Today we said at the cabinet meeting that in 2025, the European Union will experiencing very difficult economic times, precisely because of what we accept here at home to the territory of the European Union. Nonsensical limits, nonsensical conditions, meaningless goals that simply cannot be met. Not to mention that we are putting ourselves at risk with sanctions against the Russian Federation.
This opposition, revealed during a recent EU vote, underscores a critical pivot in Slovakia's economic policy and its approach to dealing with Beijing amidst a backdrop of mounting tensions between Europe and China.
We often put the European Union under pressure with fabrications like that we will impose additional tariffs on Chinese electric cars, almost 45%, instead of competing with China in terms of the quality of electric cars. So we think that if we impose a 45% duty, that this will solve the problem of importing cheap. But we also need to serve quality electric cars to the territory of the European Union. What will be the answer?
While the European Commission aims to implement countervailing duties on imports of China-produced EVs, citing concerns over state subsidies that distort market competition, Slovakia stood alone as one of the few dissenting voices. Fico articulated his concerns in a video series, dismissing the tariffs as part of a nonsensical trade war pursued by the European Commission, which he argued could have devastating effects for the European economy.
That is our Slovak opposition. Strong words, but only to harm the Slovak Republic. Harm. That means what do they want? We are not supposed to communicate with Russia. We should not go to China. We are not supposed to go to Vietnam. So where should we go? Where should we go? Where should we do our interests that we need to promote? What should we do in order for the Slovak Republic to break away from the policy of one single mandatory opinion? I should really only go to the United States, but we should only go to Europe. Is there the European Union only, and nothing else exists?
Fico's commitment to protecting European markets is grounded in a belief that competition in the EV sector should be based on production quality rather than punitive tariffs. However, his argument shines a light on the intricate dynamics of global trade, particularly the challenges posed by China's extensive industrial policy, which has provided substantial support to its EV sector over the past decade. Critics argue that the proposed tariffs are essential to level the playing field, as China has invested approximately 200 billion yuan, around 26 billion euros, in its EV industry since 2009, through subsidies, tax breaks, and other forms of state aid. While acknowledging that Chinese EV manufacturers are emerging leaders in the global market, Fico's government contends that these tariffs could inadvertently stifle investment and innovation in Slovakia's burgeoning EV sector.
Well, then we have to prepare for it, that this is likely to apply to some agricultural products, especially Slovakia. But most of all, we are all shaking about what will happen if China introduces a product that puts exports at an extreme disadvantage, luxury car, which we produce in the Slovak Republic. After all, that Volkswagen makes some luxury cars.
With Slovakia increasingly becoming a hub for legacy automakers such as Volkswagen, KIA, and Stellantis, as well as a site for new Chinese investments like Volvo's EV-only factory, Fico's government is banking on the growth of the EV market. Speculations are rife that Chinese state-owned SAIC is considering Slovakia for its European expansion, and a partnership with Chinese battery giant Gotion further cements Slovakia's position in the EV supply chain. Fico's visit to China aims to solidify these economic ties, with expectations of signing a strategic partnership that could further enhance Slovakia's attractiveness to Chinese investments.
We will never interfere into the internal affairs of another country, and we respect the way which the country chooses when it comes to managing its own internal affairs. We must respect China. We must even say, with great respect, that it is a country that has 1.5 billion inhabitants, is stable, and guarantees peace, and a certain degree of balance, not only in the region, but also in the whole world. China is becoming a decisive world player, and I even think that the settlement of the dispute in Ukraine will not be possible without the active participation of China.
By opposing the EU tariffs, Fico not only aligns Slovakia's interests more closely with those of Beijing, but also seeks to ensure that local automotive manufacturers can compete effectively against a backdrop of rising global competition.
Today we said at the cabinet meeting that in 2025, the European Union will experiencing very difficult economic times, precisely because of what we accept here at home to the territory of the European Union. Nonsensical limits, nonsensical conditions, meaningless goals that simply cannot be met. Not to mention that we are putting ourselves at risk with sanctions against the Russian Federation. We often put the European Union under pressure with fabrications like that we will impose additional tariffs on Chinese electric cars, almost 45%, instead of competing with China in terms of the quality of electric cars. So we think that if we impose a 45% duty, that this will solve the problem of importing cheap. But we also need to serve quality electric cars to the territory of the European Union. What will be the answer?